Look, so when we talk about all the historical notes, it adds to the flavor of this great matchup. And, of course, there's the quarterback battle on the big stage. You got Ian Book coming off that performance against New Mexico, and then there's Jake Fromm. When you look at this quarterback matchup, what are some of the things that you're preparing for, that you're looking out for?
Well, I think, Ian is sensational, and I mean, he's perfect for Notre Dame. I think their offense started to click when he took over last year. I was at the Manning Passing Academy this summer for a couple days and got to hang out with both Ian and Jake Fromm. Pretty similar guys in their temperament, their approach to the game. I didn't know Ian had as good an arm as he does. He's got a really good arm for a guy that's 6 feet tall, and, well, for any guy, for that matter. And we had some discussions, the three of us, about what this atmosphere was going to be like. And I said, Ian, you ever been to Athens? He said, no, sir. I said, you ever been to Athens at night for a football game? No, sir. I said, you're going to love it. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think, he's what stirs their drink completely. Now, Notre Dame can't have him be their leading rusher, or they're in a whole bunch of trouble. His elusiveness is going to give Georgia some issues. I just think Georgia's speed on defense probably will be able to counteract that, but I don't know. He's really shifty. And Jake's kind of under the radar. Everybody's talked so much about what Jalen's done, what Joe Burrow's done, and you can on the list of, what Tua's done so far through 3 weeks. Jake's just kind of doing his job and going about his business. One of these games, he's going to have a breakout game, and it's not like 279 yards and 3 touchdowns last week wasn't a breakout game, but he only played 2 quarters. As long as he keeps winning, Jake Fromm doesn't care, and Ian's very similar to that. So I look at those two guys as 2 winners and 2 really exceptional kids, and it's going to be fun to watch them both.
One more question before I let you go. Speaking of 2 guys that are winners, the head coaches, Brian Kelly and Kirby Smart. What kind of a treat is it to have these 2 head coaches, and you get a chance to talk to them a little bit getting ready for prep?
It's I tease Brian because it seems like about every 4 years I do a Notre Dame game. When I was at ESPN and ABC, we would do them on the road occasionally, and so I'd have a chance to be around him. And now I'm going to tell him when I talk to him, this is one of those times. There's not many times when there's been a coach around more than a decade, at Notre Dame. You can put them on one hand. I think Rockne and Leahy and Parsegan and Lou and whatever. And then Kirby, Kirby and I go back far enough that I was doing games when he was a player. So 2 really quality coaches and 2 guys that think that they've got good enough teams to be there in the Final Four at the end. We'll find out a lot more about these 2 teams, because is one good enough to be number 3 and is one good enough to be number 7? We're going to find out on Saturday night.
All right, Brad Nessler joining us here on CBS Sports HQ. Brad, have a great call. Say hi to Gary for us. Appreciate when he joins us during the season. And special hello to Jamie Erdahl. Tell her we miss her at HQ. Thank you.
We definitely miss her. She's going to have baby Brooke with her this week, Tommy, so I'll give them both a hug for you.
You bet. Appreciate it, Brad. Thank you. And as we continue our coverage,
it is the SEC on CBS in prime time this weekend with Georgia hosting Notre Dame. Both teams thinking college football playoff. Adam Zucker, Brian Jones, and Rick Neuheisel, who's abandoning us to go on the road this weekend. Is anybody playing better football than Georgia right now, guys?
Old-fashioned football.
Oh.
They are going right at you. They have the ability, with a contingent of running backs that are outstanding, starting with DeAndre Swift. They come downhill, and that's the old way to play the game. Everybody else, Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence, are whipping it around the yard and all that kind of stuff. I'm telling you, this is old-fashioned. Notre Dame's going to have to answer with a brilliant offensive performance to keep that offense on the sideline.
Let's not sleep on their ability to pass the ball, because Jake Fromm is a guy who takes care of the football. He's like having a coach out there on the field. And these young wide receivers, Dominic Taylor and George Pickens for the Bulldogs, are really starting to step up. I am going to wait and see if Notre Dame has some playmakers who are going to emerge, because Brian Kelly has said that's been the sticking point for his squads over the last few years. You got to get some of those elite playmakers to show up and affect change in games like this.
Minus that, it'll be Ian Book that has to find a way with his legs to make the 3rd down conversion percentage much better than it's been so far this year. 6 of 22 thus far for the Irish. That's not going to get it done in Athens.
And you're both taking the Dogs in this one?
Taking the Dogs. That running game, and the Irish are giving up 230 on the ground per game.
All right, there you go. We'll see you in studio this weekend.
All right, fellas, thank you so much. It is a prime timer Saturday, 8 Eastern. Notre Dame and Georgia between the hedges. Can't wait. And for more of a preview of this one, we bring in a couple BSers. Barrett Sallee and Barton Simmons joining us here from the Cover 3 podcast. Let's see. I'm going to have Barrett start on everything, and then Barton, you can respond. Let's break this thing down position by position, beginning with quarterbacks. Jake Fromm for the Dogs, Ian Book for the Irish.
I give the edge to Jake Fromm, and Brian Jones mentioned it in the segment before. He's like a coach on the field. You can trust him to get in a great play every single time. He knows the offense. He knows what's expected of him, and he always takes a profit. And he said this a couple years ago at Media Days, and he kept repeating it this year. You don't go broke taking a profit, and that's the mindset a winner has to have. You don't just because it's a shot called does not mean it's a shot taken. And Jake Fromm knows that, especially with these receivers. They're still sort of breaking them in. Be smart with the football. He understands that behind this offensive line, play action is going to work because they're going to establish the run. I think Jake Fromm, because he's been around the block, because he's played in a national championship game, because he stepped in on the fly and played at Notre Dame in his first game, ever since then, he knows the big stage, he knows the offense, he knows what to do. And Jake Fromm right now, I think the best is yet to come. He gets labeled as a game manager. He doesn't have to be a game manager. He can be a difference maker, but because he's so good at managing games, he doesn't have to go up there and put video game stats up.
Yeah, I'm with you, Barrett. I think you got to give the edge to Jake Fromm. And it's, look, he doesn't have the horsepower of some of these other big-name quarterbacks around the country, the Tuas and the Trevors of the world. But what he does have, and you touched on it, Barrett, is just that even keel, calm demeanor in the pocket. Just a great understanding of where to go with the football at all times. And Ian Book might have that too. But we did see him expose a little bit against Clemson last year. When you're playing in this big of a stage, this big of a setting against this talented of a defense, sometimes the game starts to move a little quicker. Sometimes things are feeling a little faster in the pocket. I don't think we ever see Jake Fromm speed up his play. He's always calm, cool, and while there's a little more athleticism maybe in Book, I think we trust Jake Fromm just a little bit more.
And I'm going to call an audible here because I'm going to start with Barton the rest of the way, and then Barrett, you can follow as we transition to the running backs. Now, Ian Book actually leads the Irish in rushing yards. Georgia rushing it for nearly 100 yards more per game.
Yeah, and I think when you look at this is not really a fair fight, to be honest with you. I mean, Jafar Armstrong's hurt for Notre Dame for one, and that stings. But if you're just comparing Tony Jones, and look, Tony Jones he's a good running back. He's a starting running back for Notre Dame. He could start for most college football teams, but he wouldn't start for Georgia. He wouldn't be the second string, maybe not the third or fourth string. I mean, this Georgia running backfield is just stacked with DeAndre Swift, Brian Harrion. You got James Cook as more of an all-purpose back, and then Zamir White, who's maybe as talented as any of them. He's just still getting over injury. So the fact that Georgia can just throw these waves of talented, physical running backs at you, all of them have big play potential, all between the tackles' ability, and they're all running behind that massive offensive line. It's hard not to give the edge to Georgia. In fact, you have to, and Georgia would have the edge at the running back position against just about any team.
Yeah, I agree with Barton. Even if Jafar Armstrong was healthy, it would still be Georgia, and it would still be Georgia by a mile. And I love the way that the new offense behind James Coley, the new offensive coordinator, has mixed in these different running backs in different situations. He doesn't have to give the ball to DeAndre Swift every single time. He doesn't have to give Swift 35 carries. You can mix in Brian Harrion. You can mix in Zamir White and James Cook, two former five-star kids. And I think the creativity of this offense, using those guys as receivers out of the backfield, has been huge for Georgia because they've been breaking in a new wide receiving core. That sort of helped stabilize this offense. Yeah, I mean, this is, in my mind anyway, the best running back core in the entire country, and I don't even think it's really close.
A clean sweep for Georgia so far on quarterbacks and running backs. How about at the wide receiver position? Again, starting with Barton.
This one much closer to me, and I could certainly make a case for Notre Dame having the best wide receiving core. In fact, the receiver that I trust probably the most on this football field on Saturday night is going to be Chase Claypool. But the receiver that I fear most might not even be starting for the University of Georgia, and that's George Pickens. Maybe it's Dominic Blaylock, a couple of true freshmen. I really think that Georgia's depth at the receiver position gives them a slight edge here as well. And I do say slight, and I mean that, because I think that Lawrence Keys is an upgrade from what Notre Dame's had in the past. Matt Fink rather is a good wide receiver and is as well. And I mentioned Claypool, who is absolutely everything that Equanimeous St. Brown was before him, everything that Miles Boykin could have been as a deep threat. So there's talent there. But it's scary what Georgia can trot out there in terms of speed and stretch the field ability.
I'm going to hop on the other side of the river, and I'm going to say Notre Dame, and I'm going to say it for this reason. They at least have Chase Claypool, right? In terms of experience, I think you trust, if you were to take all these receivers right this very instant on Georgia and Notre Dame, Chase Claypool would be the guy that you trust most. And then behind him, Javon McKinley and Tommy Tremble are pretty solid. Now, if we're going on the potential, I'll take Georgia's any day of the week, but I think in this specific game, with this specific matchup, you do have to factor in injuries a little bit. Tyler Simmons hurt his shoulder for Georgia last week. Demetrius Robertson didn't play. Sounds like he is going to play on Saturday. So there are some injury concerns on an already thin, on experience anyway, wide receiving core for Georgia. So because of that, I'll go with what, in my mind anyway, is more of a sure thing, that Chase Claypool is going to be reliable, that Javon McKinley and Tommy Tremble are going to be there to help out. Although I think if you were to ask me this at the end of the season, I think Georgia would win this in a runaway.
Well, finally, Notre Dame getting its logo up there as we move on to the defensive side of the ball. And when you look at the stats, it's flat out Georgia, because they're allowing fewer than 8 points per game. In 3 games, only one team has scored a touchdown against them, and that's Murray State.
Yeah, and I think you got to give Georgia here as well. And I think that we could see Notre Dame's defense start to evolve and improve over the course of the season. With it being this early, I just think defensive interior and the line position in particular, Notre Dame hasn't quite shown us yet that they're where they need to be. And it's a small sample size. What I'm really going off of is Louisville. And those first couple drives against the Louisville team that, granted, they didn't have a whole lot of tape on because of the new coaching staff. Juwan Pat, that crew really, and I think as we start to see a new linebacker group settle in, perhaps there's real improvement. But right now, again, if you're talking about trust, I just trust the defensive front seven, the athleticism that Georgia has. I think the back end is a bit of a push, really like Notre Dame's secondary. Front seven, I think too deep and too talented at Georgia to give Notre Dame the edge there.
Yeah, I'm with you, Barton. Linebacker Drew White and those guys, they clearly struggled against Louisville. And now they're going to go up against Georgia's offensive line and those running backs and Jake Fromm and that play action. So I think that's a liability. And the thing for Georgia is, look, they didn't get any pressure on quarterbacks last year. And then now through 3 games, they're already halfway to their entire season mark in sacks last season in 14 games. So they fixed the problem. They fixed the glitch, so to speak, to steal a line from Office Space. They're a complete defense front to back. And I think that's the biggest thing for this defense, is that there really haven't been any holes in situations, even against Cupcakes, where holes would have presented themselves last year. And then you look at what they do in the red zone. There are only 2 teams in college football who have not allowed a red zone touchdown. One of them is Wisconsin, because they haven't allowed any point at all. But the other's Georgia, and I think that tells you all you need to know about what this defense actually is.
All right, well, I don't know if I need to ask this, but when you factor in the point spread, I guess it is a question. I think you guys are both going to pick Georgia to win, but will they cover the 14 points as it stands right now?
I'm going to go, yeah. I think, well, I guess I'm going on a push. It was 13.5 earlier in the week, and I got Georgia covering that because I think right at 14 is about right. I think this is like a 31-17 type of game. I think Georgia, the depth that they're going to have over the course of 4 quarters is going to start to pile up. I think this 4-quarter.
Jesus.
Yeah, I think what Barton said, 38-14 is actually my score as well. I think Notre Dame might hang around just for a little while, right? Just for a little bit. It might have it late in the second. Too tough in the trenches on both sides for Georgia. I think that running game will wear down that defense. Jake Fromm will make a couple big plays off play action. I do think it gets pretty sideways in the 4th quarter. I'm saying 38-14 in a game that Notre Dame shows up, but I think this is the game they need to have, and I don't think they're going to have it because they're not going to get another shot to put a strong data point on the resume.
Well, I hope both Barrett and Barton are wrong, so we get a close, exciting game on Saturday night on CBS. Fellas, thank you so much for the time.
And I'm out of bullets. That's a different feeling right here.
And we're going to start right there with Pete Prisco and Brady Quinn. I'm Chris Hassel, and we're going to preview all 16 games on the slate in Week 3. Let's start with the Thursday night football game. It's the Jaguars and Titans, and let's start with Jalen Ramsey and that asking price. 2 first-round picks for Jalen Ramsey.
I think it's fair for his services. Wow. He's arguably the best cornerback in the game, and I think if you look at what Laramie Tunsil went, a guy at the left tackle position, I know different positions, but nowhere close, I think, as far as how they've performed in this league so far. So 2 first-round picks is probably what it's going to take. But the other part of that conversation, Pete, is he's looking for a huge contract, too, as part of this trade.
And by the way, there's a report that the Friday could be a trade day. If you're going to trade him on a Friday, why would you play him on a Thursday? That makes absolutely no sense.
Well, the team trading for him wouldn't want that to happen.
No,
risk
obviously. So for me, and then I checked in with somebody up there, and they said, no, that's coming from somewhere else. That's not true. Will they take 2-1s for him? It depends on where they are in the round, too. If they're at the back end of the round, that's like 2 2s for a star player. So I think they would got to get their socks knocked off to trade him. The other thing I've heard is the owner might sit him down and have a nice conversation with him and say, you're going to be here. You're here through 2020 under contract. They can tag you for a couple years. So what are you going to do, sit out 4 years?
You're going to hold out.
For 4 years. You're going to sit out 4 years.
Zeke Elliott just was in the same situation. 2 years left on his deal, and he held out.
Dallas caved. Yeah, they won't cave. If the owner's, he's stubborn now, he won't cave. He's not Jerry Jones.
But it also doesn't help to then hold a spot for a guy who's holding out, who's not helping your team.
So then by the time he's 29, he'll be a free agent. Go have at it, Jalen. Come on, Brady. It's well.
Eventually, the team would not want to have him as part of their team.
Ideally, you'd like to get him to a long-term contract. I get it, but if you don't, they have that option to keep him under contract if they want to.
Okay, but it's very unlikely they're just going to waste the time keeping him under contract and having him not show up if he wants to hold out and miss all the time. That's why players hold out. That's why Dallas eventually caved.
And who's the last one to hold out for an entire season? Le'Veon Bell, but he was in a different situation. He was a franchise.
Not a holdout. It's not a holdout when you're under franchise tag. If you don't sign, it's not a holdout. We got to stop saying that.
Okay, but
people
he sat
out
out
there,
the whole season.
It's only a holdout if you're under contract.
Okay.
If you're not under contract, it's not a holdout. When you get franchise tag, you have to sign the tag.
Before he did it,
then you would be under.
Who did it? Before he did it, who sits out?
Nobody
sits out.
Yeah, because eventually one of the two sides
Because they need the money.
No, or the team comes in with a new deal.
No, usually they need the money.
The team comes in with a new deal, like we saw at Dallas.
And how long do you think he can be the best cornerback in the NFL?
So he's 29. When he's sitting out for those 4 years, he'll come back. He won't be the best corner anymore.
So at least for several more years. Now they have
so often.
No, I'm right.
Trying to get off the schneid on Thursday against the Titans in an AFC South clash. And we know the Jaguars are a bit of a mess right now. What do we know about the Titans?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit of up and down roller coaster ride so far. They're a great week 1, week 2, not so much. So it's hard to understand what we're going to get in a short week from a team that's coming on the road. I look at this matchup like this. I think they're a good defensive team. So I think Gardner Minshew is going to be challenged. I think the rushing attack for the Jaguars are going to be challenged. If you gave an edge in this game to either the Jaguars offense or the Titans defense, Pete, maybe you disagree. I would give it to the Titans defense.
No,
on the flip side, though, I'm not sure what to expect from the Titans offense. I mean, will A.J. Brown end up being the number 1 receiver for this team? It kind of looks that way, or it's maybe trending that way. But that's a tough secondary to go up against, especially if Jalen Ramsey is a part of it. And I'm not confident in Marcus Mariota on the road short week being able to put up a bunch of stats to do what they need him to do.
He doesn't throw the ball down the field. He did not drive the ball down the field at all last week. And to me, that makes it easy to defend him. He's the question mark. I mean, look, we can go into this game and talk about Minshew making his first home start or whatever. He actually played pretty well last week. I went back and watched the game. He did some really good things. They kind of restricted him too much.
They could have won that game if they put the ball in his hand at the end.
Of course. And then Brady, Mariota's just not good enough. I mean, let's be frank about it. One knock I have.
Can we get up the quarterback skills for this?
It's still Mariota. It's closer than you think, though. But, by the way, the Titans have owned the Jaguars. In their history, they have owned the Jaguars, both at that building and at home.
They're laying 2, though, on the road in Jacksonville. Give us a pick.
Historically, too, home teams tend to win about 60% of the time if you go back and look over the course of time. I'm too unsure right now. I think there's a lot going on in the Jaguars locker room at this point. And I think the Titans have been a good matchup, or have been a tough matchup for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's shocking to say this, but I'm going to take the road team on the short week.
I'm not. I'm going to take the home team, and here's why. I think Minshew's going to outplay Mariota, and people are going to sit there and say the Titans have to move on, and maybe it's Ryan Tannehill.
Ooh, after 3 weeks.
Ooh.
So Pete is taking one Washington State quarterback to win. How about another? Luke Falk is getting the start for the Jets and the Patriots. I think that's a rhetorical question. Patriots going to be one of the heaviest regular season favorites of all time in this game as we continue to preview all 16 matchups from this week. The Patriots are favored by 22.5.
Yeah, and I'd take the Patriots and lay the points. I mean, for starters, they're playing up in Foxborough. I mean, it's incredibly difficult to beat Tom Brady, Bill Belichick when they're playing at home. But if you look at this New England Patriots team, they've got off to such a fast start. This might be one of the better defenses that Bill Belichick has had during his time with the New England Patriots. At least it's starting off that way. And offensively, with so many weapons on the outside, I just feel like it's going to be a hard matchup for the Jets, especially if they're not healthy on defense, to be able to match up with everything, Pete, that they've got at the wide receiver position.
Look, if Sam Darnold were in the game starting at quarterback, the spread would probably still be 15, right? I mean, that's just the reality of it. This is not a good team right now for the Jets. You have all that controversy with Jamal Adams, Tremaine Johnson on the defensive side of the ball. The Patriots will destroy them this week. It will be ugly. They're a much better team. And let's not forget, this defense is really good. Falk is going to be having a tough go of it against this defense.
He'll be under pressure.
And they show him so many different looks, Brady. He's going to have a tough go of it. I think this is ugly.
Well, look, it's easy for the Patriots. They stop your best two things you do, and they force you to win with your third and fourth. So you stop Le'Veon Bell wherever he is, and Robbie Anderson's the other part. And outside of that, that's it. Yeah. That's the only two things you got to stop, and you're going to be able to basically shut out the New York Jets. The only wild card in this is Adam Gase's experience from working with Josh McDaniels, from coaching against the New England Patriots during his time as a head coach with Miami Dolphins, and now being up with the Jets. He's familiar with the roster. He's familiar with the scheme. Is there something maybe he brings to this that keeps this, again, not like the Jets were going to win, but within the margin of where maybe you look at taking the Jets in this
like
game?
well, maybe that one year when the Dolphins went up there and pulled out the Wildcat and surprised them? Maybe. It's just, I don't see it happening. No way.
I don't either.
What about the point spread? Where are you going, Pete?
Oh, I'm laying it. You couldn't take
laying the 22.5.
If it was 27.5, I might still think about laying that many points.
Yeah.
In this match.
I mean,
I know it's a divisional game.
It could be like 21-0 late in the game. They get a touchdown, make it 28. I mean, I just don't think the Jets are going to score points in this game.
Patriots just won a game 43-0 on the road against the Dolphins. And speaking of the Dolphins, they're again 3-touchdown underdogs. This time at Dallas against the Cowboys. The line opened at 15.5. It's now minus 21.5 for the Cowboys, who are going to get to 3-0.
Right, they're going to get to 3-0. And again, another team that I think, even though it's a huge spread, I would take them in this one. I don't see any signs of hope. I don't see any rallying cry from the Miami Dolphins. It seems like they're only more intent on trying to break everything down to build it back up. But that's starting in 2020. So, Pete, this is another one. I love the home team. I love Dallas staying on a roll here.
Where is the talent on the Miami Dolphins? Where is it right now?
They're trading in and giving it all away.
Right, so they have none. Dallas has plenty. This will be ugly. Dak Prescott is on fire. The Dolphins defense hasn't stopped anybody in 2 games. Prescott will light them up, and the Cowboys are going to walk to an easy victory.
To your point, the Dallas Cowboys just released Taco Charlton. That was a former first-round pick.
Right.
That's how much talent they have. They're gladly saying, if you don't want to be here, we'll go ahead and release you. We don't even need to trade you.
By the way, before the draft, you know what the scouts nicknamed him? Soft Taco.
So both these guys are laying the 21.5 and also laying the points for the Patriots. What about the quarterback situation for the Dolphins? Is this a good time to put Josh Rosen out there?
It's not a good time to put any quarterback out there. I mean, look, this team isn't set up to allow anyone to have success. So the whole idea for trading for Rosen and then seeing maybe what you could get out of him, I just don't see where you can judge that. I mean, you can't judge Ryan Fitzpatrick. You can't judge Josh Rosen based on their offensive line, the lack thereof in protection, the lack thereof their ability to do much on the outside and even in the passing game. So regardless of who you put in there, they're not set up for success.
But here's what you do know. Ryan Fitzpatrick is an old, broken down.
Yeah, so throw Josh Rosen in there, see if he can survive getting pounded for the season like he was in Arizona.
He came in last week and made some nice throws. I mean,
I'm all for putting him in. I'm just saying he's going to get pounded like he did when he was playing for the Cardinals. And they had issues on the offensive line where they were the worst team last year.
Correct.
Now the Dolphins are the worst.
So what do you do? Just sit him on the bench and let him watch all season? You traded for him. You got to let him play right now.
Let him play and see if they can cover the 21.5.
They're not.
Both these guys are on the Cowboys minus 21.5, and that line keeps going up. We're continuing to preview all 16 matchups in the NFL in Week 3. Up next, the biggest game of the weekend, Lamar Jackson facing Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Nope, not today.
But we've got the A matchup of Week 3 in the National Football League. It's the Ravens and the Chiefs at Arrowhead.
Yeah, game of the week in my opinion. I think when you look at both these offenses, how they're operating so far, you've got to be impressed, I think, one with Kansas City and the consistency, bringing it from 2018 to 2019 so far, but also Baltimore. And Lamar Jackson, the biggest question mark of the offseason was, will he continue to take that next step as a pocket passer? And so far, early indications are yes. Like he's improved mightily as a pocket passer. The completion percentage would tell you that. but the film does too. And granted, he does have some guys running wide open, and he's throwing the ball downfield at some of these deep shots where, you don't have to be perfect. You can just throw it up with some air, let Hollywood Brown go run underneath it. But bottom line is, what they're doing on offense, it's innovative, it's effective, Pete, it's working, and I think it's going to create a close game in this matchup.
Yeah, I disagree with you. Look, I like what I've seen from him. He's made big strides. He also played Miami and Arizona, two football teams that aren't very good on defense. The Chiefs aren't great on defense, but going to Arrowhead, and you know this as well as anybody, you go there to play a game, that's a tough environment. I think he's going to struggle a little bit this week against the Chiefs, and I think the Chiefs are going to score a bunch of points. The Ravens' defense isn't the same. If you look at it,
Ravens' defense isn't that bad.
But they weren't good last week against Kyler Murray. He threw for over 350 yards and had guys wide open.
In the fourth quarter.
And you're going to see, no, he didn't. You're going to see Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, he did. I got the stats to prove that.
He threw for 350 yards. He couldn't score points because they bogged down in the red zone. Yeah. They will score a bunch, Kansas City, this week. And I don't know if Lamar Jackson and gang can keep up.
Sometimes the best defense, Pete, is a good offense. And that's where I think the rushing attack, including Lamar Jackson, will come into play. They're going to limit the amount of possessions that Kansas City's going to get in this game. And I'm telling you right now, you're underestimating what they're doing and what they're showing schematically. When you start throwing some of those unbalanced sets out there, and you start introducing a little bit of zone read, a little bit of option plays, or even design quarterback runs, Steve Spagnuolo's pulling his hair out right now. He's probably looking like you. And he's getting to the point where
where you're going.
Yeah, maybe. But all I know is I'm a far away from that coming, okay? Steve Spagnuolo's going to be a lot closer to it after dealing with what he's going to deal with this week.
Look, he will not like a lot of the things he sees, but he will figure out something to defend.
It's not about him how to figure out. It's the players out there.
Yeah, but Brady,
and that's the hard part.
Yeah,
they force you to figure out where you need to line up. You have to have sound gap integrity.
Kind of like the Chargers did in the playoffs. They figured it out quite easily in the playoffs.
It's different this year what they're doing.
He's a better passer
They're running more unbalanced sets.
I get it,
they're running,
but he's a better passer now.
Well, and he's a better passer. That's part of it.
Okay, so you think the Ravens will cover?
I think
or they win?
No, I think it's going to be an over, and I think Kansas City's going to win, but the Ravens are going to cover.
Over, I agree, and the Chiefs win by 10.
How about Patrick Mahomes doing what he's doing so far when everybody's gearing up for him, and he doesn't even have Tyreek Hill?
It's impressive. I mean, it really is when you look at him staying on this pace and actually being at a faster pace than what we saw last year in his MVP season. So it truly is incredible. And I think in part it shows you the genius of Andy Reid as much as it's Patrick Mahomes executing it. Andy Reid's also continually finding ways to draw plays to get guys open. But it's the way they spread the football around. It's the different arm angles. It's the way Patrick Mahomes can get rid of the football when really most quarterbacks will have to reset themselves to get ready. He could be in an awkward body position and chuck that thing 50 yards down the field for a touchdown. So, again, credit to everyone involved, but it's remarkable, Pete.
And it's the system itself, too, like you mentioned with Andy Reid. But you take Demarcus Robinson and you put him in another system, and he's probably just an ordinary guy. You put him in their system, and he goes off for a big game for 176 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, for me, they always play with their foot down on the pedal. They go. And they allow him to go. Even when you think you stop him, next thing you know, you're down 14-0. So I give a lot of credit, like you mentioned, to Andy Reid, but Mahomes, with the way he can throw the football, you can't stop him. You cannot stop that offense.
Pete laying the 6.5. Brady thinks it's going to be closer than that. He likes the Ravens plus 6.5 with the Chiefs to win. Moving on to a matchup between 0-2 and 2-0. The Denver Broncos are at the Green Bay Packers. Brady, you said yesterday that Denver was the 0-2 team most likely to turn the season around, but you don't necessarily think it happens this week.
I've hung around this guy too much because he's scared me when I sit there and can confidently say, I think Green Bay at home, surefire win for them. The defense has improved. You know, Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur in the first quarter last week, they got off to that start I think we thought this offense would get to, and they sold out the last 3 quarters. But something just isn't sitting right. And I don't know if it's the matchup of the Green Bay offensive line versus Bradley Chubb and Von Miller. And I give this defense a lot of credit for Vic Fangio. Just something wouldn't surprise me if Denver figures out a way to go in there and find a way to win. I like the Packers. I feel like I'm going to regret that pick next week.
Win?
Yes.
Not with the 8. Win.
Win.
No, they're not winning. First off, Green Bay, we haven't seen close to what they're going to be on offense yet. The first quarter was nice last week. I think you're going to see more and more of that. The concern I have with Denver is the pass rush. I thought Bradley Chubb would have his 15-sack season. I thought Von Miller would be Defensive Player of the Year. They have nothing.
People are getting the ball out of the opposing quarterback's hand quickly. Just ask Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, in part, that was like an indictment of Mitchell Trubisky last week, but it was also like we don't want to let these guys ruin the game.
I get it, but they're on the road against the Packers team. And then on the other side of the ball, the Packers defense is playing really good football. And the Denver offense isn't very good. It's not a good offense.
It's not, but it took a step in the right direction last week. They were better last week than they were in week 1. I think the issue they lack is there's no downfield vertical passing.
Nothing. They're slow.
And that's the issue when you've got a guy like Joe Flacco. He's got a big arm. That's what you're supposed to be able to utilize right now. So
their players told when I was there in the spring. I mean, in the summer, the players would tell me we have no speed on the outside. They can't run.
You know what you do? You screw out the grass. That's what we try to Notre Dame.
Grow out the grass?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys did that all the time. I know you did.
And your picks against the spread? Brady, you like the Broncos?
No, I've got Green Bay, and I've got them
Against the
covering.
spread.
Against the spread, yes.
Okay.
I feel like this is going to come back.
You think it's going to get you? You think
I think it is. I think I'm going to lose out on this one. We're going to talk about it next week, and you're going to laugh.
I could see. I'm taking Green Bay minus the points, but I could see where the Broncos would cover, but they're not winning the game.
I'm telling you, man, it's the NFL. This stuff happens.
I know. Not this one.
It is a bit scary. The Packers have only played one good quarter of offense, and they are 2-0. Maybe they do get things figured out for an entire game, or at least a half on offense this week. Moving on to the Raiders and Vikings, both teams coming off their first loss of the season. Vikings almost came back to win that game on the road in Green Bay.
This is a get back on track game for me, for Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings. Look, they're running the football better this year. I don't know, everyone wants to make a big deal about Kirk Cousins' interception last week. I don't say it lost in the game. No one play does. But it would have dramatically changed the outcome had he thrown the football away on 1st and goal and given them a chance to put some points up at least. So, to me, I think he's going to take advantage of this Oakland defense on the road, and they'll be able to have their way. And their defense is going to be a tough matchup for Derek Carr and company.
It's not a big game. This is not a big game, right? Last week, big game
Aren't
on
they
the
all
road.
big games?
He was 4 of 14 in the first half. He was abysmal. He's not a good quarterback in big games, but this isn't a big game. So you know what he's going to do? He's going to play very well this week. They'll run the ball. He'll hit some shots down the field. The Raiders are on the road. It's going to be a tough game for them. They're not that good. Vikings minus 8.5 because of Kirk Cousins. Why? Because it's not a big game.
You know, once you get on Pete's bad side, you can't get on the good side.
Does he win big games?
Well, maybe he'll prove that at some point.
What is he, 5-26 against teams with a winning record or something like that? He doesn't win big games.
So minus 8.5
now
for
all of a sudden
Pete.
quarterback wins, that's a stat now? The wins and loss, that's a stat now?
Well, curling up in the fetal position in big games,
I mean, it's being hypocritical
It's not a stat, but you
when you can't use it, but then you use it at times to make an argument.
You always defend him. I don't get it.
Brady, Vikings win by 2 scores or more? Okay.
Yeah, I win by 10.
Both like the Vikings minus 8.5. All right, moving to the Falcons and the Colts. The Falcons coming off that huge late win against the Eagles.
This is the toughest game for me to pick, I think, this week, in part because, again, another game where you don't necessarily know where you're going to get, Pete, from each one of these teams. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think it's definitely going to hit the over, and I could easily see it coming down to the wire. And I think I just trust Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, making a play at the end of the game to win this. I know they're on the road, and things haven't necessarily been that smooth with Dirk Cutter now coming back as their play caller. But defensively, this promising thing is they're getting more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So I think they're going to pressure Jacoby Brissett a little bit more than I think we're accustomed to seeing.
Yeah, and I agree with you. This is the toughest game of the week, and it's actually a really good game. And, the Falcons looked disjointed at times last week. And they looked great for a moment and then looked terrible at times. And Ryan,
As part of that was on Matt Ryan, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Some bad interceptions.
Yeah, and so I think, but when they had to get a good play call, they got one at the end of the game against the blitz. And I think that they're going to be able to move the ball on the Colts. Colts have been pretty good on defense. This will be one of those games where they move the ball.
That's what I'm curious to see how aggressive the Colts will be. I brought this up before. Sunday Night Football, there's 3 times we're in blitz 0, right? It's all-out blitz. As a quarterback, you know you're going to get hit. The results were this. First time, interception. Next time, sack. Last time, touchdown. So I'll be curious to see if the Colts want to gamble and pressure Matt Ryan, or if they're like, we want to stay away from
I'm with you. This
result.
is going to be a fun, high-scoring game, but in the end, I think the Falcons find a way to pull it out.
Okay, so the Falcons +2 is Pete's pick, and you like?
Falcons as well.
Falcons +2, both of them on Atlanta to get to 2-1 this season. Pete
right.
Prisco,
Put the best players
Brady
in center
Quinn,
field.
Chris Hassel. Obviously, I was kidding. They put the worst player out in right field. Giants and Bucks is our next matchup. This one interesting because Daniel Jones is getting his first start.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to see what we can expect from the offense. I think the only thing that you're going to see different from Daniel Jones' game that Eli Manning's going to be his ability to run. I mean, I think they might incorporate a couple plays where he keeps the football runs, or just basically scrambling once he sees all the pressure he's going to get from this Todd Bowles Tampa Bay Bucs defense. So he's going to be challenged. I really like Tampa in this spot, especially with the extra time to prepare and how Jameis looked Thursday night.
By the way, I saw my father today, who's a diehard Giants fan. He said, hey, Eli Manning gave up 63 points in the last couple games, so I guess it's all on him. I mean, look, should he have been benched? Probably not.
Wait, your dad is against the benching of Eli Manning?
Yeah, the way it was handled. He didn't like it. But
okay.
the bottom line is, at some point, Daniel Jones has to play.
Right.
When is the right time? And so I'm a big believer in now is the right time, because I think it's time to move on. This is going to be a challenge for him, though. That Bucs defense will throw. Todd Bowles, you know Brady, he'll throw everything and anything at him.
Oh, yeah.
And as a rookie quarterback, you get anything and everything thrown at it. But Todd Bowles throws a bunch at everybody.
Well, some people say the kid is saying, I like the Rolodex. You don't know why? Because what they do is they give you one blitz, and you don't see it again the rest of that game. They give you another and another and another and another, and every single time you're trying to figure out how to pick up the last one you couldn't figure out, and then the next one comes, you're having issues with that. So he's a Rolodex blitzer, and or blitz caller, and that's hard to obviously adjust to as a rookie quarterback.
We said this earlier today on one of the shows. 2 weeks ago, we would have said the Bucs defense was a major liability. 2 weeks in now, it's probably the strongest unit on the team.
Yeah.
And how about the opportunity for the Bucs this week? And Jameis Winston coming off a good week and a good win last Thursday against the Panthers. You got the Panthers at 0-2. Cam's banged up. You got the Saints, who are without Drew Brees for the next 6 weeks. They get to 2-1 and should get to 2-1 here.
Yeah, and maybe have a chance of finding their way into a wild card spot. I mean, that's really what we're talking about right now. I don't think they're going to be able to keep pace with the Atlanta Falcons. I think it's a more talented team. I could be wrong at the end of the year when it's all said and done, but yeah, I think you got to like, though, the strides that he took even from week 1 to week 2 on a short week for Jameis. Not turning over the football, looked better, and hopefully he's bringing that into week 3 for Bucs.
Oh, and I think he will. Look, the Giants aren't very good on defense either, so I think the Bucs are easily going to win this game, and Daniel Jones is going to struggle. It should be no indictment of him if he does, by the way.
Yeah. I think any rookie dealing with what Todd Bowles throws at you with all these variety of blitzes and different looks.
And no weapons. I mean, he's got Barkley and
well, the offensive
Ingram.
line struggled, and he's got a couple, but yeah,
no
their wide
weapons.
receivers aren't there yet.
No outside
Right,
weapons.
Pete laying the points, you as well?
Yeah.
Okay, both laying the points like Tampa Bay at home against Daniel Jones and the Giants. Moving on to the Carolina Panthers, who face potentially a must-win here. We don't know if Cam Newton is going to be able to give it a go because of the foot injury, taking on Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. Brady, you're calling this game, so you're not going to pick it against the spread.
Yeah, but I think there's a couple things you can really look at, just again from week 1 to week 2 for Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. Is they've somewhat improved, but they haven't really figured things out in games until the fourth quarter. That's when all 6 of their touchdowns. So it's kind of interesting it's worked out that way. Could this be an opportunity at home for them to kind of break out and really showcase this air raid offense? Potentially, because the secondary, I think, for Carolina struggled a little bit. And without Cam Newton, they're going to have some opportunities, Pete, if he doesn't end up playing, and it is Kyle Allen.
Yeah, if Kyle Allen plays, I think Arizona wins the game. If Cam Newton plays, I think Carolina wins the game. So we really don't know. But aren't we getting hints from Ron Rivera that's going to be Kyle Allen? I kind of get the feeling it's going to be.
Well, why would you say it this early in the week? You know, you don't have to declare that, and you're already kind of admitting a little bit. I just think if you look at it from Arizona's standpoint, if it is Kyle Allen, there's one thing I think we know that they're going to do defensively. They're going to stop Christian McCaffrey. I mean, that's the one thing that you can bank on from the Carolina Panthers that's been consistent. And so it doesn't seem like it's that hard of a game plan, maybe harder to execute.
Now, when he played last year against New Orleans, he was pretty good. I mean, he did a pretty nice job. It's another thing to go play a game in week 3 on the road. It's going to be tough. Remember, the Saints had already
week 17, meaning Bridgewater started. He didn't play
all either. So for me, I just think this is going to be tough sledding if he's in the game. If it's Cam Newton, I'll take the Panthers. If it's Kyle Allen, I'm taking Arizona.
And that's why it's not on the board right now. As of Wednesday afternoon, this game has been taken off the board because we don't know about Cam.
But we can't create our own over-unders. How many times are we going to get a solo shot of Cliff Kings on the sideline of this game? Considering that I'm a part of calling it. Over-unders 4.5.
Why? Because you're both pretty boys?
What? No.
Wow.
Maybe our producers, maybe he wants to show him a little bit more.
Oh my God!
How do you factor into this?
I don't factor. I'm saying I'm a part of calling the game.
I thought you were talking about like a split screen. YouTube.
Well, if I start talking about Cliff Kingsbury once, they're probably going to have to start showing him on camera.
So a face jock off, is that what we're going to have?
Oh, if you're allowed to say that, but you just...
That did not sound right.
It did. That's right, though.
Thank God we're on digital.
Oh, Petey Prisco bringing it home. Let's move on, please, to the Lions and the Eagles. The Lions are undefeated. They're 1-0-1. The Eagles coming off that heartbreaking loss, and they're all banged up, too.
They're really banged up, so much so that they're basically doing walkthroughs, which typically as a team, look, it's not that big of a deal to have a walkthrough at this point in time during the week. It is this early into the season. You know, usually you're talking about maybe week 12 or afterwards starting to have those walkthroughs throughout the course of the week. To be going into week 3 and having these issues, that's a concern. And I think there's also a concern for Carson Wentz, Pete. Just watching him Sunday night, I don't know if he can change his style of football at this point, but he takes so many unnecessary shots, hold on to the football a little bit too long, and as much as they can create that huge play that helps this team win, At the same time, he can't help them win if he's going to be hurt. He's not playing yet.
I ask this question all the time. Who are the Detroit Lions? Do we know who they are? Do we have any idea what their identity is? Who are the Lions? Every year it's the same thing. Do they want to run it? Is Matt Stafford going to throw it around?
I think now with
They're
Matt
undefeated.
Patricia, with Matt Patricia, I think they want to play good defense and run the football. And I know it's a formula you hate,
Oh, I
but
hate
that's
it.
why they brought in Darrell Bevel. He was a part of that formula out in Seattle too.
That formula doesn't win in the long run, and it won't win this Sunday either. It won't win
So
this
why do you
Sunday.
always pick the
But
Jags to
will
win
it
games?
cover?
Huh?
Will it cover?
Will it cover? That's a pretty big number for a team that's banged up. But you know what? Carson Wentz will play well. He'll throw to other guys, and I think Ertz will have a big day. I like the Eagles.
I like the Eagles as well because they're playing home, but I do think the Lions keep this one close. I mean, really close. I think it will be low scoring. And so I think it's a low scoring, hits the under, close game. Eagles find a way to win.
Lions win this game, and all of a sudden we're talking about how great Detroit is after coming off a
2-0-1.
season. Nobody
Shouldn't be
expected anything
undefeated
from
because they
them.
shouldn't have blew
Very
the first
true.
game.
Very true. Okay, let's move on to the Bengals and the Bills. The Bills are 2-0. Every single table in the Niagara Falls area is probably getting ready to be broken, isn't it?
Is that where we're at now?
Someone's cousin is going to go for the table, you know.
They're just throwing people on tables, everyone's jumping on tables. They should be. I mean, Josh Allen is taking the next steps that I think every Bills fan or Bills Mafia is hoping for. He looked great in week 2. And I think this is a spot where they should win this game, and they should win easily. My concern is if they don't. I think you look at the matchup, this Buffalo defensive front versus this Bengals offensive line, that's favorable. And really, again, just their ability with him running the football, but also those deep shots downfield. That's going to be the X factor. That's going to ultimately put the Bills past the Bengals in this one.
There'll be a lot of wings sold and a lot of beef on Wex in that area this week.
What is beef on Wex?
It's a buffalo sandwich. It's roast beef on this Wex bun, which is all salt on it. You know,
Wow,
beef,
that
it's a big
sounds-
buffalo thing.
That sounds bad, but I
It's
bet
awesome.
it's really good.
It's awesome.
The line is lower than I thought it would be. I figured the Bills would be 8, maybe 9.
People still aren't buying. The public's still not buying in on the Bills. They don't know what they are. I mean, they beat the Jets and the Giants, even though they were both on the road. They don't realize how good that defense is, A, and how much better Josh Allen is as a quarterback. I love the way Sean McDermott coaches his team. I don't care who they're playing. Every week they're going to be feisty, they're going to be tough, they're going to be physical, and in this game they're going to be dominant. They will handle the Bengals.
A little concern for me, too, though, if Devin Singletary doesn't play. I know that's Jamie's fantasy guy. Loves him, even though we tried to give him that advice to pick him up earlier. But if he doesn't play, it takes away a little bit of their dynamic ability from the backfield. I mean, obviously Frank Gore getting up there in age.
The 49ers grabbed guys off the street and threw them in last week, and they ran for yards against that team.
Okay, that may be the case, but still, for this offense, for the Bills, I do think it would take a little bit of that away, especially the way they've utilized him.
Yeah, he's not as good as Singletary, but TJ Yeldon will come in and play. They'll be fine running the football.
You mentioned fantasy. John Ross, I think he leads the league in receiving. Another long touchdown last week. Can he keep this going?
Not against this defense in that secondary. I think that's the one guy, again, they're going to be honing in on third down, or when they get in that plus area of the field, they're going to be looking for those shots from Cincinnati. So I suspect that he'll have a little quieter day on the road versus this defense.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a tough day for the Bengals.
Okay, so you like Buffalo minus the 6 as well. Brady likes Buffalo
They get to
minus
3-0.
the
They're going to make the playoffs. I picked them to go to the playoffs, so I'm going to pat myself on the back.
Yeah.
A lot of games left to be.
Definitely number 2 in that division behind the Patriots right now, for sure. Steelers and 49ers. Who would have thought going into the season the Steelers would be 0-2, the 49ers would be 2-0. Niners at home against Mason Rudolph.
I think this is a spot for the 49ers where they should win this game. And if they're as good as we think they are, they got a great defensive front. Jimmy Garoppolo is playing as well as we've seen him play. And so this is a good opportunity for them to kind of hold home court, home field advantage, and improve that. And then on the flip side of this, I think for the Pittsburgh Steelers in this matchup, Minka Fitzpatrick, they just got him. He's going to play. How big of a help or how much aid can he provide this defense? I don't know. But it will be interesting to see how this offense changes a little bit now that Mason Rudolph is taking over.
Yeah, and again, this is a good defensive front, so that's going to be a problem for him. The Steelers are good on the offensive line, so I think he'll be protected a little bit.
They haven't been as good this year.
No, they haven't, but they're pretty good. That group has been solid, and Roethlisberger holds the ball too. It'll be interesting to see Rudolph getting the ball out quicker than Roethlisberger does. I think he's going to try and get Juju Smith-Schuster involved early and get him going, which he should do. Keep an eye on James Washington. Again, they were teammates in college at Oklahoma State. They had a great rapport in the preseason. He might be a factor here, but I'm with you. I think this is a bad spot to go on the road and make your first NFL start in San Francisco. I like the Niners big.
It's a great point about James Washington because we haven't really seen that number 2 wide receiver step up. Like Dante Moncrief has been bad to the point where they've addressed it publicly. I mean, Mike Tomlin talked about all the drops he's had, how much they paid him.
He
and all
needs
that.
hands transplant.
He's got some extra money to maybe use for that to help him out. But in all seriousness, either James Washington or was it Dante Johnson, the draft pick out of Toledo, one of those two guys I think is going to step up this week into that number 2 role outside of Vance McDonald, who's been good too.
What do we think about the way Jimmy Garoppolo has performed the first 2 weeks of the season after that overreaction in the preseason when he was terrible?
He's been great, but he doesn't have to mess it up.
But he wasn't. The first week he was just
week he was okay. Yeah.
Last week he was very good.
Right, and look, Kyle Shanahan dials the stuff up for him. I mean, it's seldom you see players who aren't those household name star guys running as wide open at times as you see some of the players from the 49ers. So the credit to Kyle Shanahan, as long as Jimmy Garoppolo executes that and goes with the football where it should, they shouldn't have an issue.
No Joe Staley. That could be problematic for him. But again, I think they find a way to win this game. The young quarterback will turn it over a couple times.
The question is, do they cover?
Yes.
I don't know.
It's a big number for the Niners.
It's a big number for the Niners, and I think I'm to that point where I'm saying the Niners win. I don't know if they cover, though.
I had a tough time with this one, but I took the Niners.
All right, the number is -6.5. Pete likes the Niners. Brady, not so much. Staying in the NFC West for our next game, and it's another 2-0 team, the Seattle Seahawks at home against the New Orleans Saints, who might be playing 2 quarterbacks in this game, according to Sean Payton.
Yeah, what is with that? I mean, to me, I think we all know Teddy Bridgewater is probably going to march out there as a starting quarterback, and Taysom Hill is going to need a fair amount of play, but you know, you're not instilling confidence in your quarterback. You're not going to go out there and say, hey, Teddy's our guy right now. It's why we have him on the roster. It's why we signed him to the contract. We're going to give him the opportunity to maybe look like he could be the heir apparent to Drew Brees one day. But it's just kind of surprising that he would take that approach with it.
If you have 2, you have none. That's what I used to say at the quarterback position. And right now, they don't have one. But I'm with you. Teddy Bridgewater should be the starting quarterback, and he should play the game. What are you going to do if he throws a couple incompletions? Is he going to start looking over his shoulder? He's going to get tighter? It makes no sense to me. Sean Payton has a weird infatuation with Taysom Hill. I don't get it. He's not a good passer. Now, if you want to gimmick up some of the stuff you want to use him on, I'm okay with that if you take Teddy off the field, because you used to take Drew Brees off the field. Or at least line him up out wide. You can do that to Teddy Bridgewater too, but don't make him the backup. Don't let him play half the game. You're in, you're out. That's never a good way to have a guy play quarterback.
I think the biggest question for the Saints is going to be, one, can the defense step up the way they need to in order to stop the rushing attack of the Seattle Seahawks? You know they want to do that. And then how are they going to match up on the outside? The secondary hasn't played that great so far this year. DK Metcalf is coming on for the Seattle Seahawks. We obviously know Tyler Lockett's been solid. And so how can they kind of maybe limit some of those explosive plays that we've seen from some of the stars for the Seahawks?
The one thing I will say is the Seattle offensive line has been bad the first 2 weeks. You know, it's been a problem for much of Russell Wilson's time there, but they thought they were better this year. They've been bad. They got whipped by Cincinnati up front, and they got whipped by the Steelers up front last week. So they better make sure they block Cam Jordan, because that guy could be a wreck a game by himself.
How about the NFC West right now? There are 3 teams that are 2-0 at the top, and the Seahawks and 49ers favored to go to 3-0, and the Rams, of course, the pick to win that division, likely 3-0 as well.
Well, yeah, and I think you look at this matchup, you know, Seattle for me, going up against a backup quarterback, or maybe 2 for that matter, but playing at home. I mean, this is a really tough place to play. It's loud. You know, you look at that defense, they feed off of that. I can't see the Saints going in there, especially being the first week, making this adjustment at the quarterback position and finding a way to win. I think Seattle wins and they cover.
Now, they stayed on the West Coast, which will help with the adjustment, but I don't think it matters. The only thing I'm concerned about here, the line's 4. That looks fishy to me. Yeah. You got a backup quarterback.
Not a football number.
It's weird, right? Didn't you think the line would be like 6 or something?
I thought it would either be 3 or 6, somewhere in that ballpark, depending on how it, you know.
Looks like they're fishing.
Well, especially with the home field advantage you get in Seattle,
That's 3
the way
points.
things go there, and with young quarterbacks that aren't that experienced.
So it's
where you guys land?
Okay, I think they're throwing the line at us.
Well, I'm hooked.
I'm hooked.
You're hooked?
I got Seattle. I'm laying the points.
Yep.
Okay, Seattle -4 for both Brady and Pete. Moving on to the Texans and Chargers. Both teams are 1-1. How about the Chargers coming off that somewhat surprising loss to Detroit?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily see that taking place, but I think this is a good spot for them. And I think when you look at the matchup, look, they've got one of the better defensive fronts, better defenses, going up against an offensive line, the Houston Texans, that still hasn't really come along and figured it out. So, to me, Phillip Rivers at home, you look at the trip, you know, Houston's got to go out to the West Coast. Not that big of a difference considering they're obviously playing Houston, but still, this matchup is a bad one for the Texans. And I think it's going to be a tight game once again, but I give the edge to the Los Angeles Chargers.
I watched the Texans on tape this morning, and the offensive line really had problems at times. And for me, you're playing this team with those two edge rushers getting after the quarterback and Bosa and Ingram. That's going to be a problem for Watson. Watson was bad last week, okay? He wasn't very good. There were times where he had the guys open and he wasn't even in the vicinity. He got a little jumpy back there, and that's a concern.
Rightfully so with that offensive line.
Yeah, I understand. But I think the Chargers are going to get after him, and he's going to turn the ball over a couple of times, and that's going to lead to short fields for Phillip Rivers again.
And another thing is we should kind of know, like, Melvin Gordon still holding out. Still waiting for that contract. Eckler looks good. I mean, it doesn't look like this
though
offense.
On the 1 yard line last week.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, okay. But, again, Melvin Gordon probably wouldn't, but I'm saying they're not missing him.
I think Eckler's better. I think Eckler's a better player.
I'm not going to say that, but he's been able to fill for that void. We'll see if Melvin Gordon wants to come back.
With the way the game is played now, he's perfect for the way the game is played.
Yeah, because he can catch the football.
Right.
But, Pete, you said earlier today you think the Chargers are going to end up having Melvin Gordon on the roster and playing.
Well, he's not going to have any other options.
Well, it doesn't sound like they're going to trade him if they get what they want.
So he's going to come back.
How's that going to look, in your opinion? How do you see that going down? And what week? How long is it going to take for Gordon to swallow his pride and show up?
A couple weeks. He'll be back in a couple weeks. You can tell he's getting antsy.
Have to be before, week 10?
Yeah, but he's getting antsy. You can tell he's getting antsy. He's already putting out statements. He doesn't want to waste his talents. Why not play?
There's a couple things to consider, and this is why it's an issue. Zeke Elliott's got his contract. That's the bar now. And for Melvin Gordon, he wanted to do that. He wanted to be the guy that set the precedent at the running back position. And so not only if he wanted to make a trade happen, someone's going to have to agree to whatever contract demands he's making.
Right.
So that's not going to happen. So not only are they not going to give up the compensation they want, he's not going to get the contract they want. So at this point, he's going to have to come back and play for the Chargers this season, and then hopefully try to